All right, so we left off in our last code when we were working with old Homer and Marge and Bart. We were having trouble being able to keep the association between their name and the high scores. And so when we tried to sort the high scores, we no longer had the appropriate name associated with the high score. And so what we're going to do is replace our parallel arrays with a multidimensional array. And let's see how we can go about doing that. All right, so I think for the short run, it's best that I just comment out all that we've done before, and we'll just sort of start from scratch. Okay, so, but I'm going to keep it here just for a visual. All right, so we had, let's just call it scores this time, and we want to keep track of, we're going to keep 3 arrays within an array. So our array is scores, so I'm going to put that in brackets. And inside of those brackets, I'm going to have 3 lists, 3 other sequences of data that is going to contain Homer's score, Homer's name and score, Marge's name and score, and Bart's name and score. So there's 2 ways, well, 2 ways I can do it. The book uses tuples, so I'll start with that because it's a little easier to see. So we have Homer, and Homer has 10, okay? So recognize that this is, according to Python, this is a tuple because I've put this in parentheses. And outside of that tuple or nested into an array or a list because that's brackets. So the book in the examples that it uses tuples, so you'll see the book using parentheses. It's a little bit easier to see, but you can also use brackets. And as long as you see that you're nesting, you can see that through my gray bar, I'm nesting a list or an array within a list of an array. And so this particular array is array item number or element number 0. And in element number 0 is Homer, which is element 0, 0. And this is element 0 of 1. And we'll look at that, how that comes together in a minute. So we're going to put a comma because we're going to put another sequence or array. I'm going to put in, this time I'm going to put Marge's in. Marge. And I'm going to put in her score, which is 25. So I'm not putting that one in quotes because it is a data type of number or integer. Notice that the gray bar is showing me that it understands that this is a complete sequence, that I've done that correctly. And I'm going to separate my arrays that are within my big array, my nested arrays inside of my big array, separate those with commas. So we're going to put the third one, which was Bart. And Bart had a score of 15, okay? So it's really important that you keep track of your opening and closing brackets because that indicates the start and the closing of this particular element, the start and closing of this particular element, and the start and closing of this particular element, and all 3 of those elements are nested in an opening and closing bracket of my scores element. So we've got arrays within arrays. They're all separated by commas. So all of your elements within arrays, as for example, the elements in this particular array are all separated by commas. So you have to really keep track of your syntax here because it can get a little overwhelming sometimes if you're not careful. You can, if it's easier, put these on separate lines if that's easier for you to see, as long as your lines end in a comma. So if that's easier for you to see, that should work too. Okay. So where do we stand now? So let's just practice. Let's print out, let's say we want to print out Homer's name. So can you think before I do it what I would print out? I need to put the name scores. That's the name of the big array. And then I need the first element in that array, which is array element of 0. So I can put 0 for the first bracket. And then within that, once I find the first element, element number 0, I have to decide which of those 2 elements I want to print out. So if I'm printing out Homer, that's element 0 within this particular array. So print scores 0 of 0 should print out Homer's name. Let's see if that works. If we've done it correctly, it should work, sure enough. If we print 0 of 1, that should print out his score. And it does, okay? How about Bart? Well, Bart is element number 1, 2, 3. So that first bracket will be a 3. And if I want to print out Bart's name, that's element 0 within that array. So that should print out Bart's name. Let's see if that works. Oh, I've got a mistake. What have I done? It says index out of range. Right, what did I do here? I used 3. It's not 3. Bart is 0, 1, 2. So since I used 3, I got this list index out of range because it's looking for element element number 3. Well, I don't have a 3. If I had a 3, it would look something like this. Maybe maybe we had Lisa, and she's the smartest, so she probably got the highest score. Make sure I close off Lisa. There you go. Now this will work. So let's run that. And it prints out Lisa's name. So now we are using multi-dimensional arrays to keep track of data that's related. Wonder if we can do that sort like I was talking about earlier. Well, let's give it a try. Let's loop through all of our arrays first. Let's do for I in range. So I want to loop through all of the scores, and then I'm going to print out each individual person and their related score. So for I in range, 0 through the length of scores. So for each element in scores, I'm going to print out scores of I. Okay, and then I'm going to print out, first I'm going to print out the first name or the name, which is element of 0. And then I'm going to print out scores of I, element of 1. So each time I loop through, I'm really just looping through each one of these. So the first time I'm going to get this array. When I is 0, I'm going to get this array. When I is 2, I'll get this array. And I is 3. And so each time I go through here and I have each of those arrays, I'm going to print out array 0 of 0. That's this one. And then scores array 0 of 1, which would print out this one. The second time we go through, I is 1. So I'd print out scores of 1, which is this array. Scores 1 of 0 would print out Marge. Scores 1 of 1 would print out 25. So let's see that work. Run. And sure enough, that's exactly what's happening. All right. So now that we've got that, let's see what happens when we try to sort our scores. So we saw in a prior video that we can just do a sort. So now if we sort scores, how is it going to know what to sort on? I don't know. Well, let's run it and see what happens. So now when we run it, can you see what happens? It's sorting it based on the first name, on the very first element. And with the tools that we have available to us, we really don't have a way to ask it to do the second element instead, to sort on the second element. It's just going to default on the first element. So if we want to do this particular example, let me just comment this out. What I would suggest we do is, let me just type it out and I think that'll make more sense. So I'm going to take the scores, and this time instead I'm going to switch these two around. So we're going to put 10. I'm going to put 25. After I'm done, I'll explain. I'm pretty sure it's getting self-explanatory, but just in case it's not. And then 50. And so what I'm doing is, well, if the only tool that I have to sort is going to sort on element of 0, or the first element that's here, well then the thing I want to sort on is their high score. So if that's the case, then I should be able to, if I just reverse the way I set up my array and I sort it, now it should sort correctly. So let's see what happens. So now when I run it, it is in fact sorting it based on the first value, so 10, 15, 25, and 50. And since I'm printing out the array that's associated with each other, the names are being maintained. So 10 is still Homer, 15 is still Bart, 25 is still Marge, and 50 is still Lisa. So then let's try the other idea where we wanted to do a reverse. So let's try scores.reverse. Okay, and then if we, let's see, this should be commented out. And if we run this, let's see what happens. So if we run it, we are not actually getting what we had hoped for. We were hoping for a reverse. 50, 15, 25 is not in order. So what we can do instead is, in this particular case, we can use the word sort again, and we're going to use the term reverse equals true. And by doing that now, we'll be able to invert our sort, or do it descending. Let's see if that works now. And now we have the order that we were hoping for. So in this particular video then, we got to see how we can utilize, we're moving our parallel arrays into multi-dimensional arrays, and we saw how we could sort them and then possibly loop through them.